Hello and welcome to the live stream. Today we have a topic that I've been thinking about it for a while. I don't know about you, but I feel like I have too much to do, especially right now. So let's do a little bit of discussion together about some things not to do, which should make everybody's lives a little bit easier, right? And the specific things that we're not going to do is we're not going to build these types of chatbots. So without any further ado, let's jump into them. They're 5. They're in order from least not to do it to most not to do it, I guess. I don't know what you'd call that. Let's hop in. All right. So you may recognize this person here as being a man with a hammer. There's a saying to a man with a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, right? So the first type of chatbot I would recommend avoiding is the chatbot you build for the sole purpose of building a chatbot. One sec, I just realized I don't have the full chat available. So the hallmarks of this type of chatbot are you're more interested in building a chatbot than solving the problem you're building a chatbot to solve. And that's a little bit of a paraphrase. I think you can just say paraphrase, right? You don't have to make it more complicated than it is. By Sini or possibly Seni Kimara, who had a talk about building systems and particularly systems that interact with social problems that went kind of viral on Twitter this week. So I check it out if you haven't already. Some good food for thought there. But yeah, I wouldn't do this. And the reason is that a bad chatbot is infinitely worse than no chatbot. And if you are focused on, learning the tool or doing something fun and not as much on the thing that you're solving for, you are very likely to build a bad chatbot. And if you're like, Rachel, I really want to do it. I really just want to build a chatbot. Let me build a chatbot. Perfectly fine. If you really want to do that, I'd recommend building a game or a novelty project and not trying to build something that will be deployed, right? Or that's going to be, used by a business or let's say a nonprofit or, if you're just doing it because you want to do it, perfectly fine. Do something fun and don't try to solve a big problem with the focus not being on the problem, if that makes sense. And another thing I would have you ask yourselves if you are in this boat is, do you want to maintain this? Do you really want to maintain this? Because often in my experience, if you are building a chatbot because you want to build a chatbot and you want to sort of learn the tools, again, perfectly fine, do a game, do something fun. You probably don't also want to maintain it, right? You're interested in learning to build, not learning to maintain. So, keep in mind. Again, this is the least bad of the 5. I just wouldn't. There's other things to do with your time. This one. The chatbot that should be a form. A little bit of tea. So a clear example of this is that you have a single form that lives on a web page. Everybody fills out the same information, and you take that and you turn it into a chatbot, and it is slower for people to fill out. If they use something like autofill on their browser to automatically fill out information or do it securely or whatever, they can't use that. You have made the experience worse and slower, and no one's going to like that. And in particular, if your users prefer web browsers, right? That's how they want to interact with the content. Pointing them towards a chatbot instead is going to make them very grumpy, and I wouldn't do it, right? Who wants to build a product people hate? Certainly not me. I don't want to. That said, there are instances where it makes sense to replace forms with chatbots, and this would be a situation where you have multiple or branching forms, right? So I don't know that I'd necessarily recommend building a chatbot to help people with taxes. Possibly if you are, have deep domain knowledge in finance, perhaps that's something that would be feasible for you. There's a tax form above you. But depending on, how you're filling out your taxes and, what sort of things you did that year, you're going to need to have multiple different types of forms, and they're going to send you different places, and you got to download different stuff. And being able to streamline that so that the organizational seams between those things are hidden from the user can be really, really powerful. So particularly for things like internal tools for a corporation. Okay, yeah, sure, maybe a particular form, you need something to go to finance and something to go to the HR department and something else to go to like a third department. But if you can turn that into one single, simple chatbot walkthrough and you end up saving people a lot of time, that's a great use of a chatbot, even if it is a form. And also, if your users really want to text or really want to use chat apps. So I think a good example of this would be something like, banking in Africa, right? Where, my understanding, I have not banked in Africa, but my understanding is that most banking there just happens by app and like via text. So that is a way that people like to communicate. That's the preference of that particular user group. Any of you who are from Africa who've had experience with that, please feel free to correct me. Yeah, so if you have people who want to text, then sending them to a web page that loads a form, and you've got to do the zoom to make the form bigger and try to fill it out, that's no fun. In that situation, a form as a chatbot makes sense. So, but the simple, we are replacing something that people like with something that people like less and is slower, don't do that. Definitely don't do that with a chatbot. So that was 2. Number 1, the chatbot you build just because you want to build a chatbot. Number 2, the chatbot that replaces a form that was faster to fill out before. Bad time all around. And number 3, an open-ended or chit-chat bot. So chit-chat is actually a technical term in natural language processing, and it is the task of having an ongoing open-ended conversation with a human. So a lot of times people who read a lot about the Turing test will misrepresent this as being the Turing test, right? That the chatbot, pretends to be a human and a person is fooled, and that's not what the original Turing test is. I don't want to get into it in great detail, but this is the task. And my question to you, chatbot builder, are you a researcher working on chit-chat as a task, a research task in NLP? And if you are, then I guess you could do it. I guess. Not my favorite research task for a number of reasons. I think the sort of utility is very, very limited, and I work in industry. I'm pretty focused on the outcomes. But if you're not, you don't need this, right? So I've had so many discussions with developers where, you have a task-oriented system, you're filling out a form, maybe that's like actually 8 different forms under the hood and is customized for every single user. And you also want to be able to talk about football. That has nothing to do with the core functionality of the chatbot. And you're like, well, what if somebody, talks about something off topic? If somebody talks about something off topic, you have a way to handle off topic things and be like, thanks for bringing that up. We can't handle it, right? Or my specific purpose is to do this. This is so hard. It's so expensive. And I have yet to come across a good reason to do this, particularly in a commercial setting. You do not need open-ended chit-chat in a chatbot for pretty much any application that I can think of, period. Just don't. It's so much work, and it's just not worth it. Another question, so that's just me saying things, and I hope that you trust me. But another question for you is, okay, you have a chatbot that can have any possible conversation. How are you going to evaluate that? How are you going to know when it's broken? How are you going to know when it's working well? What does success look like here? And a lot of time, the success markers here will look like people continue to interact with the chatbot. But for me, again, from an industry standpoint, what success looks like for me is that people can get stuff done faster. So continuing to interact with the chatbot well past the time when, a time savings happens, for me, it looks like failure and not success. Yeah, it's so hard to do. It's not a solved problem. We don't know how to do it. You are very likely to offend somebody or have, a very unpleasant interaction. And I don't know of a good reason to do this. Certainly not for some sort of project that you're doing for work. Don't do it. I know it sounds cool. I know people have said that they solved it. Speaking of other, again, we're sort of going up in terms of badness, and this is a big one. Don't build chatbots that solve raw neural generated text. I'm not saying any generated text, because you can do things with, let's say, slot filling that are much more constrained. Even then, very important to be careful about it, particularly if your chatbot's speaking for a brand or a company. But the neural generated text in particular, I would highly, highly recommend avoiding. So classic example here is Tay, which was a chatbot developed by Microsoft. It was an open-ended chatbot. It used neural generated text, and it also folded in user interactions into the training data. And it was awful. It quickly said racist things, it quickly said sexist things, it quickly said xenophobic things. Just horrible all around. It was awful press for the researchers, it was awful press for the company. Nobody had a good time. And you're like, okay, Rachel, that's one example from one company. Well, did you know that it keeps happening? People keep doing it. So these two over here are both from 2017, another Microsoft chatbot, Zoe, that was being Islamophobic, and Alice from Yandex, which is a Russian company, for those of you who aren't familiar. Again, exact same thing happened. It said awful things, and those things, reflected on the company. And then this is from 2021, the one above me from Scatter Labs, Lee Luda, was, I believe in particular there was a lot of homophobic content, and it was based on, I believe, a dating app chat log. So yeah, the potential downside and bad press is enormous, and the potential benefit is, again, just like with an open-ended chit chat bot. Why are you doing this? What is the value that this is generating? I mean, maybe you want bad press, and if that's the case, I guess go ahead. All right. And number 5, these are the worst. These are the ones that I would absolutely never say that you should build. So the neural generated text has the possibility of, being deceptive or harmful. But of course you could build a chatbot that was deliberately deceptive or harmful, and you shouldn't. Don't do that. So the specific guidelines that we actually have at Rasa, our principles for building chatbots, specifically things to look out for and avoid. So first of all, an assistant should not cause users harm. So make sure that your responses when you're writing them are appropriate for the target users of your chatbot. So particularly if you're working with a protected class like children, the legal and legal protections and ethical implications are more heightened. Another thing, don't encourage or normalize harmful behavior from users. So let's say if your user is, mistreating your chatbot, particularly if your chatbot has a human persona, make sure that you're not allowing them to do that and acting like it's fine. Also, make sure that you are always identifying your chatbot as a chatbot. So with Rasa, when you create a new chatbot using Rasa init, we have that bot challenge intent and that bot challenge response. So if somebody said something like, are you a chatbot or is this a human? It will respond appropriately. Just keep that in there. Add more examples as you see them, of course. And always provide users a way to prove its identity. So this would be something like, if you have a chatbot for a financial institution that I can do banking through, I need a way to make sure that this is the chatbot from the financial institution and I'm not accidentally, being deceived into giving in my account information to a fraudulent chatbot that is then used to steal information, etc. So have a way to show that this is the right chatbot. It's the one that you meant to be talking with. So those are the 5. And again, just sort of increasing order of don't do it. I want to build a chatbot. If you really want to build a chatbot, I recommend sticking with games or, jokes or something fun without real stakes, and that it doesn't matter if you don't maintain. Chatbots that replace forms and make them slower to fill out, just don't do it. No one's going to enjoy it. Open-ended chatbots or chit chatbots, particularly for commercial application. Why? What's the benefit here? How would you know when it's going to work? How are you going to evaluate it? And then if that chit chatbot serves raw neural generated text, you are almost guaranteed to say something awful at some point. Also, I didn't mention this on the slide, but there's been quite a bit of work on text generation from neural models, and particularly large language models, that shows that you can trigger it, right? Using, the triggers depend on the model and the text that it was trained on, but it's possible to force a neural language model to generate, bigoted or harmful content, and then, oh, it's come from your company. So there's, additional risk there just by deploying it publicly. And finally, deceptive or harmful chatbots, just don't do it, right? And we have those ethical guidelines, and you can check those out. They're on, I think, Principles for Building Chatbots. If you search for a Rasa Ethic Guideline, you should find them pretty quickly. Emil says, or Emil, why do people keep doing these types of chatbots? It feels like this outcome is expected. You would think. You would think, indeed. Yeah, it's a pattern. And like I said, chit chat is a research topic. It's not my favorite research topic. I get it. The sort of dream of computing, as long as computing has been an idea, right? So from, you know, the first description of what could be considered a computer in Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, the sort of the dream of computing was that you would have something that could produce language that was interesting or useful. And chit-chat is a sort of a facet of that. And I get it. It's a very human impulse, right? We want to talk to things, gosh darn it. But I think it misrepresents the capabilities of our systems. And I think the anthropomorphization, or representing something not human as being human or having traits of humanhood in particular, is very dangerous, particularly outside of the field. So people who have, don't have a good understanding of, say, natural language generation might believe, that they are developing a relationship with a chatbot agent, which is just not the case, right? They may be feeling real human feelings, but those will never be reflected by a chatbot, right? It's a generator. So just like a handful of dice does not have a feeling towards you, it is an object that creates output. Anyway, yeah, but slap these on your not to-do list. Do fewer things. I think we could all appreciate that right now. Yeah. So, little content note. This is going to be my last Friday live stream for a while. I'm moving, so I'm going to be out for a couple weeks. Next Wednesday, Vincent and I will be doing office hours together, so come with your questions for that. And Vincent and then Yusta, the head of DevRel, will be taking over office hours as well. So those will keep happening on Wednesdays at 9 a.m. Pacific. And we also, I know some of you have been struggling a little bit with the new Rasa X installation. We have a video that should be out Monday, fingers crossed, on walking you through the installation and deployment process. So keep an eye out for that. Cameron says, so thoughts on Replica? Yeah. I wouldn't have built it. That's my thoughts on Replica. Gustavo says, what about considering chatbots as a kind of interface? We're working on a chatbot as an interface to consume information from the enterprise ERP. I think that is a fantastic way to think about chatbots. Sometimes you'll hear people call them conversational interfaces, right? It's a way to interact with a computer. I've got my tea. I've got some time. I'll go on a little tangent here. So when I was in grad school, one of the things that I did was I was an adult literacy tutor, so helping adults to read. And the same place where I volunteered also did adult computer literacy training. And I think particularly as technologists, we forget how much you have to know to use a website, right? So even think about it. Let's say somebody gifts you an iPad, right? So you can use your fingers. You don't need to understand a mouse. There's a learning curve. You don't need to understand a keyboard. You can touch and move the cursor. You have to understand the concept of a button. You have to understand clicking. You're probably going to have to connect to the internet. That's not trivial if you have never done that before, right? The concept of Wi-Fi is something that you learned at one point in your life, probably quite long ago if you're watching this channel, I would imagine. So all of those learning steps to use an interface that's visual, I think can be one of the things that I really like about chatbots is that we all already know how to have conversations, right? We know how to talk. We know how to express ourselves using language in some capacity. I shouldn't have said talk. That's very limiting. And chatbots let us use that capacity when they're well designed to do the things that we need to do, interacting with computational systems with ideally a very shallow learning curve, right? So I need to know how to text. Right? I need to know how to read and write if I'm doing a text-based system, or I need to know how to connect to a voice interface. And then if we build good chatbots, we can really genuinely open up access to a lot of people. But it's hard. It's hard to build a good chatbot. I mean, honestly, it's kind of hard to build any chatbot, including a bad one. But it's harder to build a good one that's genuinely useful. But yeah. So I definitely think about chatbots as interfaces a lot, particularly when the underlying system is complex, but you make it simple to get that information, right? So Amina, who often comes to our various live streams. I think it's quite late for her at this point of day, is working on a chatbot interface to a knowledge base so people can ask questions and get the information that they need. Yeah, I don't know. I do believe in chatbots, but there's a lot of things that, I don't know, it's just not worth your time, right? Like, the outcome's not going to be good. You're going to waste a bunch of time and compute. So why? Why do it? Anyway. Yassine has a question. I just started working on a chatbot with Rasa open source. I use Django to show the discussion. So my question is, can I give a profile picture to my chatbot since I designed its face? That's a great question that I don't know the answer to. Yeah, so you'd probably want to build some sort of customizable widget. Front-end person. I'm really not. On Django. Yes. Yes, it's possible. I don't know how to. You may need to use a template, maybe. Some Django people can help out. We also have, I don't think I have one set up for this view, but you can also ask on the forums, which is forums.rasa.com, and you might get some more luck with some front-end folks. Elias says, any examples of problems where people try to build these hammer-nail types of chatbots? What have been the typical solutions to these problems? Great question. Great question. I'm gonna try to come up with a helpful, concrete example that's not too specific. Okay. It's Black History Month, so I'm gonna take an example from his name is on the first slide and it is no longer in my head, but you can scrub the video back and find it. So the talk that I was mentioning that you should check out if you're interested was about building technological solutions to social problems. So I think a good example of like would be a chatbot to, say, solve racism, right? You want to build a chatbot, you have, a problem that you know is a problem and that you believe in and that you want to help solve, but you don't have a good, underlying understanding necessarily of the thing that you're trying to work on, right? And I think it can be very well-meaning, but the point for you is building a chatbot that does something cool and helpful and not so much solving the underlying problem, right? Because if your goal is to solve racism, building chatbots is probably not the thing that you're gonna want to spend all your time on, if that makes sense. I had another good example. They came to me while I was talking, and now I'm forgetting it. Right now, it's sliding out of my head. Come on, brain. Specific type of chatbot for a specific problem. And it's gone. Well, I'll come up with it when I come up with it. No. Yeah, sorry, Yassine. Good luck. Yeah, Elias says, I've run into the pitfall of starting with a forum chatbot. Yep. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it's not. And I think I mentioned this a little bit, but for me, a good litmus test is this going to save people time? If it isn't, they're going to hate it and they'll write you nasty grams. But if it is, then they won't notice it, right? If something saves somebody a lot of time, they just generally sort of gloss right over it. And for me, that's the ideal situation. The best chatbot is one nobody ever mentions because it just works and it's very intuitive. And they're just like, why would I say anything? It's a conversation that worked. That's how conversations should work. So that's my goal. Oh, wow. I'm really trying to remember the other example I had. Oh, well. Anyway, I think I'm gonna wrap it up here. I've said what I was gonna say. I've said my piece. Cameron says domain knowledge bots. Yeah, if you don't have the domain knowledge, that can be a really tricky thing. Yeah, like I mentioned the example of chatbots that give financial advice. Very, very tricky area to be in. You should really know what you're talking about before you go in there. For both, you want to build something useful and also legal reasons. So, all right. Thank you so much for joining today, everybody. I hope this was food for thought. I hope you have some things not to do, which is always nice. You've already done them. Congratulations. And I will see you next Wednesday with Vincent, and we're going to be talking about whatever it is you want to talk about. Come in, bring your questions. Yeah. Okay. I'll talk to y'all then. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you later. Bye.